Hello. All right, Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Good to be with you here on this lovely, lovely evening that we have for ourselves in Belmore. You might notice this weekend that the rabbi is not here. She's going to be taking the Shabbos off. So, as they say, when the rabbi is away, the chazan will play. So we'll have a good time. All right. That's right. We begin our service welcoming the angels with Shalom Aleichem on page 13. La 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 la. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Bochem leshalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. La 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 la. Ay la 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 la. La 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 la. Ay la 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 la. Barchuni leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. La 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 la. Page 15. Let's keep singing to Adonai with Lechunei Ranina. Lechunei Ranina, Lechunei Ranina, Lechunei Ranina, Ladonai, Lechunei Ranina, Lechunei Ranina, Lechunei Ranina, Ladonai. Naria, Letzui Shenu, Kadma Pana Betoda. Naria, Letzui Shenu, Bizmirod Naria Lo. Lechunei Ranina, Lechunei Ranina, Lechunei Ranina, Ladonai. 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 Kia Melchados, share with us. Kia Adonai Eloheinu v'nachmi. Arba'im shana kut bedor, va'omarem to'in levavehem, vehem liyadu drachaya, asher nishpati v'api, im yavun el menukati. Page 16, Psalm 96, sing a new song to Adonai. Shilul Adonai, Shir Chadash, Shilul Adonai, Kol Haaretz. Shilul Adonai, Baruch Shemo, Pasru miyom, Yom Yeshuato, Safru v'goyim kevodo, Echol ha'amim nifleotav, Ki gadol Adonai, Umulal me'od, Norahu, Al kol Elohim, Ki kol Elohei amim erilim, V'Adonai shamayim asa, Od dehandar lefanav, Ozvei tiferet b'mikdasho, Hambul Adonai, Bishmechod amim, Hambul Adonai, Kavod va'oz, Hambul Adonai, Kevod shemo,
צאו מן החם, בוא לחצרותיו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש, חילו מפניו כל הארץ. אמרו בגויים אדוני מלך, אף תיקון תבל פעל תימוד, ידינמים במישרים. ינאי רי 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 ינאי רי 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 נאי רי 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 ay ray 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 ay ray 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 ay ray 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 yismechu hashamayim yismechu hashamayim yismechu hashamayim v'tagel haaretz yiram hayam yiram hayam yiram hayam umelo yiram hayam yiram hayam yiram hayam lo yismechu hashamayim yismechu hashamayim yismechu hashamayim v'tagel haaretz yalo sabechol hashebo sabechol hatzeyar lifnei kiva yishpot haaretz yishpot tevel betzedek be'amim be'emunato.
Page 17. Adonai Malach Ar, he's claiming Rabim under affiliation. I love the imagery of this particular psalm. God's lightning illumines the earth. Fire consumes God's foes. Mountains melt like wax before Adonai. The earth trembles. You picture these enormous mountains, like a mountain like Everest, crumbling and melting like wax before Adonai. I talked a little bit about this in my blast, this concept of fear, not fear in the sense that I'm afraid of heights, but fear in like a reverence, of like an awe. That's what this psalmist is really talking about in this particular psalm, right? Of seeing something so miraculous, so amazing that it causes you to fill with awe, this power. Let's use that sense of awe as we continue at the bottom of the page with Or Zaru Alat Tzaddik, light is sown for the righteous.
Or Zaru Alat Tzaddik, Ule Yisrael Simcha. Or Zaru Alat Tzaddik, Ule Yisrael Simcha. Simchu tzadikim v'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kodsho. Simchu tzadikim v'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kodsho.
Page 18, Psalm 98. Needs more shir and shechad dashim. Odulanai. Speak through it. Fachat kol shofar harut mehamela.
Yiram hayam lo tevel v'yoshveva. Neharot imcha uchaf yach miraneinu lifnei kiva lishpot haaretz yishpot tevel betzedek ve'amim be'meisharim.
Adonai Malki Tami Kishit Art. Roman Heavy. Moshe, the Uncle Kana Mushma, Operation Mo.
Adonai Eloheinu, Ata Nitam, Enosei Aidalahem, Venokem Alilotam. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Vishtachavu Hakocho Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Vishtachavu Hakocho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Vehishtachavu Hakocho Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Vehishtachavu Hakocho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu.
Please rise for Psalm 29 on page 20.
Mizmor David, Havul Adonai bnei Elim, Havul Adonai kavod vaoz, Havul Adonai kevod shemo, Ishtachavu Adonai behadrat kodesh. Kol na el hamayim, el hagvor yirim na hamayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai be'adal, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Yishaber Adonai al ze halvanon. Vayar kidem kemo gela, halvanon vesirion, kemo ben reimim. Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, yachil Adonai midbar kadesh. Kol Adonai yecholel ayalot. Vayechesov yarot, vayechalom merkavod. Adonai lamamul yasham, Yeshev Adonai melech leolam. Adonai oz yamo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo vashalom.
We turn to the pinnacle of our Kabbalat Shabbat service, the part where we ask the bride of Shabbat, the Kala, to come. And this is always one of my favorite parts because in addition to the amazing poetry of Lecha Dodi, I always like to think that I can find something in the actual poetry of this particular prayer that will relate to almost any mood or state that I'm going into for that particular week. I had a lovely day today with my beautiful daughter Rose, and so what's speaking to me is this bottom stanza. Awake and arise to greet the new light. From your radiance the world will be bright. Every single thing that Rose sees is new for the first time, and it will continue to be so. And so she's awaking, sometimes with a shrill, and it's not, very nice, but still, it's a new light, and it's very, very beautiful. So let's take that idea of a childhood wonder as we welcome in the Shabbat bride, the Shabbat queen for Lecha Dodi. Page 21.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamur v'zachur b'dibur echad, Ishmi'anu el hamiyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mekor haberacha, merosh mikeden nesucha, sof maaseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Mikdash melech yimelucha, ומצאים מתוך הפך, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה. Let's go! לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשמה נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשמה נקבלה. התנערי מעפר קומי, לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי, על ישי בית הלחמי, קרבה אל נפשי גאלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשמה נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשמה נקבלה. התעוררי, היווה אורך קומי אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשמה נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשמה נקבלה. לא תבושי ולא תקלמי, מה תשתוכחי ומה תמי, פר יחסו אני עמי ונבנתה עיר עתילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. היו למשיסה שוסייך ורחקו הגול, מבלייך יסיס עלייך אלוהייך ימסות חתן על כלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי ואת אדוני תריצי, אל יריש בין פרצי ונשמחה ונגילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום, עטרת מעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לי כתקלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לי כתקלה, פני שבת קבלה.
Please be seated. We turn to Psalm 92, a psalm for Shabbat. And I want all of you to take just a moment here and think about your week. You can close your eyes, you can keep them open. Think about all the people that you were in contact with this week. Maybe some of the lives that you touched this week. Maybe some people that you annoyed a little bit this week. And breathe in the essence of Shabbat and breathe it out that week. Think about this wonderful Shabbat ahead that you have in store for yourself. Now you're going to enjoy it, whatever that means to you, with your family, friends, with nature. And breathe in that Shabbat again. And breathe out the week. Continue at the very bottom of the page. The righteous shall flourish like palm trees. They shall grow tall like a cedar in Lebanon. Tatit Katamar.
Katamar Yifra Yeres Balevanon Yiske Shetuli Bevet Adonai Bechatzrot Eloheinu Yafrichu Onyenun Beseva Deshenim Verananim Iu Lehagi Yashar Adonai Suri Velo Avlatabo.
Page 23, Psalm 93, final psalm of Kabbalat Shabbat.
Adonai malach Yehu lavesh Adonai osit azar Avtikon tevel bar dimon nachon kisacham eyaz olam atan. נשאו הנהרות, אדוני, נשאו הנהרות, כולם, יישאו הנהרות, דוח ים. מקולות מים רבים, אדירים, משברי ים, אדיר במרום, אדוני, אדיר במרום, אדוני, אדוני מלך גאות לבש, לבש אדוני, עושית זר, אבתיקון תבל, בל תימוד, נכון כיסך מאז עולמתם. עדותיך נאמנו מאוד לביתך, נעם הקודש אדוני לאורך ימים, לאורך ימים. אדוני מלך גאות לבש, לבש אדוני, עושית זר, אבתיקון תבל, בל תימוד, נכון כיסך מאז עולמתם.
This week, we remember the memories of Lily Brownstein, Nathan Korn, Lisa Eckstein, Bertha Gensler, Ruth Levinsky, Irving Grossman, Phyllis Hinden, Murray Meshnick, Victoria Marheim, Eva Mussman, Elaine Rabinowitz, Gerald Rabinowitz, Albert Richmond, Mary Schwartz, Alan Solat, Anna Teese, Ruth Weinstein, Sylvia Zaglin, Irving Zimmett. Is there anyone that I missed? May the faith that binds us to our loved ones be a continuing source of comfort as we invite those who mourn and those of you observing Yortzeit to praise God's name with the words of the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shmei Rabbah, v'yoma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agola v'zman kari v'yamru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach leolam leomei omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithalev v'yithalal, Shemei de Kudisha Brichu, Li'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiran v'oma v'yimru amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mama v'ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen.
Amen.
Before we start Mariv, I'd like to call on Mark Miller for a few words.
Everybody's on this side. That's good. I don't see around while I'm talking. Excuse me? I know. Hey, Dan. All right. So, my honor to give a devar today. It was this morning, actually, after I prepared this, that I watched last Friday's devar that the rabbi gave. I don't know how many of you were here or how many of you watched the live stream, but he talked about the same topic that I'm going to talk about. Hopefully, I'm not going to be repeating the same information. There's some overlap, but who was here or listened to it and remembers what the topic was? Okay. Okay. It's about the Shema and what Shema means. Okay, that might bring it back to some of you. So I want to thank Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sack, who I blatantly plagiarized from in coming up with this devar. For those of you who know of Rabbi Sachs, he was an amazing man. He died last November at the age of 72. He was the chief rabbi of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom, and I think he was an extremely warm and compassionate man, as well as being a great scholar. So some of what I'm about to say, I give credit to Lord Sachs for, Rabbi Lord Sachs. So we all know about the Shema. The Shema that we will be reciting in a little while, which is on page 30 if you want to look at it, is the most important prayer in Judaism. What I'm going to be talking about is the word Shema and what it means. So when the rabbi spoke last week, he said it means to listen or to hear, and we all know about that meaning. But there are other meanings, and according to Rabbi Sachs, the word Shema cannot be accurately translated from Hebrew into English because it has so many multiple meanings, and it's used in so many ways in the Torah and in Torah study. So, of interest, now that we're into the book of Devarim and we're in the Parsha Eikev, it's interesting to note that the word Shema comes up in the book of Devarim 92 times. Now, I'm not sure if that means that the exact word, which is Shin Mem Ayin, comes up 92 times or some variation on that root, and I wasn't going to count through Devarim to find out. So, but the word is essentially the same. We know from Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, that we had in our parsha last week, how important that concept of listening or hearing is in Judaism. I'm going to expound on that a bit. This parsha, Eikev, the next one, starts out with Vahaya Eikev Tishma'un et HaMishpatim Ha'ele Ushmartem Va'asitem Otam. I don't know if I can just stop there. But essentially, it's translated as, and if you obey these rules and observe them carefully, the Lord your God will maintain faithfully for you the covenant that he made on oath with your father. Okay, so the word obey is the way that's translated. Okay? Later in this Parsha Eikev is the second paragraph of the Shema, which if you don't skip over it when you're kind of going through this quickly during prayers, it's Vahaya im Shemoa Tishma'u el mitzvotai asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom la'ahava et Adonai Elohechem ul'avdo v'chol levavchem u'v'chol nafshechem. Now, what's interesting to me is that if you open up your book, and it's not a bad idea, just glance at your siddur. In that second paragraph, the words are V'haya im shemoa tishma'u. Now, I don't know, and I would defer to the cantor, but there are two words, shemoa and tishma'u, that both have that root of shin mem ayin. So in a way, there are two words that come one after another, and this is all about listening and hearing, so that was appropriate somehow. It's a message from somewhere. Those two words are really amplifying, it seems to me, the concept of how important it is to hear and hear deeply. So, because it really repeats the same word in another form. And the translation is, if then you obey the commandments that I enjoin upon you this day, loving the Lord your God and serving him with all your heart and soul. That's how the second paragraph of the Shema goes. So, as I said before, the word Shema, according to Rabbi Sachs, is untranslatable directly into English because it means many things. And here's a list of some of the things it means. To hear, to listen, to pay attention, to understand, to internalize, to respond, to heed, to hearken, and to obey. Although, and again, I defer to Rabbi Sachs on this, there is actually no word in biblical Hebrew for the word that we translate as obey. Which is kind of interesting to me. With all the commandments, 613 commandments, we are expected to obey them, but there's no word that actually reflects that. Huh? Observe. Okay. So observe should be here, I guess, too, right? So God does not seek blind obedience. He wants us to listen, not just with our ears, but with the deepest resources of our minds and our hearts. In what I think is a very interesting historical context, Rabbi Sachs contrasts he calls it the twin foundations on which Western culture and civilization were built, ancient Greece and ancient Israel. Now, he contrasts these by saying Greece, the Greek civilization, was very visually oriented. And if you think about Greece and Greek culture, think about art, sculpture, and architecture, all visual experiences, and also group events, spectacles, and the spectator role that most of us play when we watch theatrical performances. The Greeks are known for their plays, and also the Olympic Games, which is very timely at this point. They established the first Olympic Games, but it was, except for the athletes, everybody else was spectators. A little different than what's happening this year in Tokyo. Not too many people there observing, so you can watch it on TV. Our culture today is still visually dominated. To this day, our culture here in the U.S. and probably throughout the world is very visually dominated. We speak of having insight, foresight, hindsight. Foresight is in all of those, obviously. We offer an observation. We adopt a perspective. We illustrate. We illuminate. We shed light on an issue. And when we really understand something, we usually say, I see. Aha, I see. Right? Judaism takes a totally different approach. And it's not a coincidence, I think, that in Judaism, our God can't be seen. God can only be heard. So we cannot, how many times does it say it in the Torah? I don't have the exact number for this one, but how many times does it say, thou shalt not make a graven image? It's in the commandments, and it's repeated elsewhere many, many times. Making an image, certainly an image of God, is one of the worst sins. That really equates you, if you do that, with being pagan. We do not see God. We do not make representations of God. So in last week's Parsha, Moses was talking to the people of Israel. And by the way, this whole part of the Torah, the Devarim, just to remind you, is Moses' valedictory to the people of Israel before they, or the descendants of the original slaves, except for two people, are going to cross into the promised land. And the whole book of Devarim is Moses telling the people what they should keep in mind and what they should listen to God about. So when he was talking to them and reminding the people about Sinai, he said, you heard the sound of words, but perceived no shape, nothing but a voice. God spoke from the mountain. There was thunder and lightning and a lot of jazzy stuff going on, but you didn't see God. You also heard shofars blowing, certainly a lot of sound, but not sights. God spoke, gave his commandments, and calls to us. when Moses first encountered God when he saw the burning bush, that was no form, that was no shape. That was a burning bush in the middle of the wilderness. So there are other places where the Torah tells us that you cannot look at God. There's kind of that visual metaphor, which almost makes God have a face, but we know that God doesn't have a face. But if you look at God, a human being cannot look at God and live. Even Moses had to be shielded from looking directly at God. Also of note, I think, is that when Moses first encountered God at the burning bush, and he argued against him being the chosen one to go to the Pharaoh, he said, "I'm slow of speech." He was not a good talker. He was better at listening. I don't know he's always that great at listening either. Sometimes he didn't listen so well, but God chose somebody who was not a speaker as much as a listener. So, in Rabbi Sachs's words, the supreme religious act for Jews is Shema, is listening, hearing, and all the other words that it stands for. When God speaks, we listen. When he commands, we try to obey. So, getting back to the contrast between the Greeks and the Israelites, or the Jews, for the Greeks, knowledge involved being detached. There's a subject and an object. The subject looks and sees the object. The relationship is one of separation, being a spectator, not engaged in a direct, active relationship. The Greeks, because of this, excelled in science and philosophy, theater and arts. They were able to see things and study things visually. Until recent times, the Jews, not so much. There are exceptions along the way. But for Jews and Judaism, we cannot see God, but we can hear God, and God hears us. And that's our hope, and that's what we pray for. That's what our prayers are, our communicating with God. And I'm sure you've heard the phrase that in the Torah, God speaks to us. In our prayers, we speak to God. So there's a relationship between speaking and listening. And as a result of that relationship, that discussion kind of relationship, we have an intimate relationship with God as our parent, our partner, our sovereign, the one who loves us and whom we love. We cannot demonstrate God scientifically. We cannot prove God logically. These are Greek, not Jewish modes of thought. God is not an object. God is a subject. It's also been known to say God is a verb. Okay? But in this context, God is a subject. God has a sense of being, and he or God, I will not give a sex to God, connects with us, and it's a relationship. So hearing the voice of God is not so easy for most of us. There may be some exceptions, but God does speak to us if we listen carefully enough. Is connected with the prophet Elijah, about God's still small voice. If you listen carefully, if you reflect and you listen, you can hear that still small voice, and that's how God speaks to us. So, to bring this to the human level, listening is essential for human relationships. Being open to the other person, respecting the other person, conveying via listening that what the other feels and thinks matters to us. So there's a parallel between our relationship with God, that relationship, that discussion, that conversation, and our relationship with other human beings. This involves the willingness to be vulnerable emotionally, to really connect with other people. This involves true empathy, namely entering into the experience of the other person without judgment of them, but with acceptance of their personal, unique experience. Good parents listen to their child. Right? Even already with Rose. Okay? Good employers and managers listen to their employees. Good leaders listen to those they are leading. Listening, in some ways, is more important than speaking. One of the concepts that I love as a psychologist coach is psychological safety. It's the ability to feel that it is safe in a workplace or in a relationship to say whatever you're really thinking and feeling without fear of discrimination or repercussions. So safety in a relationship is the counterpart of vulnerability. You can be hurt when you open up, but you can also connect. Listening does not necessarily mean agreeing with the other person, but it does mean caring for and respecting the other person. Self-esteem and self-confidence flourish when a person from the youngest age on feels heard and understood in a relationship. Feeling heard and accepted unconditionally is probably the most beneficial aspect of psychotherapy, counseling, and coaching. More than anything else, more than technique. Can you listen and really hear the other person, and do they feel that you're really listening and hearing them? That's really the most therapeutic thing. And it's so rare, right? How many people really listen? Hopefully I'm not putting you to sleep. But hopefully, but listening is hard. Listening is hard. Listening in that undivided and focused and unconditional way where your own thoughts aren't intruding, where your next thought or what I'm going to say next is more important than listening to the other person. Our relationship with God, of listening to God and our expectation of being heard by God via our prayers, is also reflected in our relationship with the people in our lives, including our families, in our workplaces, in our congregation, and in the larger communities in which we live. Listening and hearing are essential in bridging the gaps that divide people within a community and within our country, sadly at this time, more than most times, and between nations as well. In human relationships, listening is a profound affirmation of the humanity of the other person. It also affirms our belief that we are all children of God. In our relationship with God, listening is a profound expression of our humility, but it also affirms that even as human beings, which compared to God are so insignificant, we can be in a relationship with the source of creation and goodness. So let us all strive to listen more, to strive to hear the voice of God, and also to strive to truly hear the voices of the human beings who we love and who we care about, and also even of those with whom we don't usually agree. In this book of the Torah, Devarim, Deuteronomy, Moses wanted to convey this message of the importance of hearing and following the commandments and instructions from God to the children of Israel before they were to enter the promised land without him. In our lives today, the importance of the lesson of Shema, of truly hearing others, is perhaps even more critical than ever. Shabbat Shalom.
Please rise for the call to worship on page 28. Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai Amevorach. Baruch Nevorach Le'olam Va'ed. You can see that. We're in the line of all footsteps. ומעביר יום מביא לילה, מעביר בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד מלוכה לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, אמרי ברבים. Page 29, about to lamp Yisrael Kadai. Alkin Elohim b'Sofim Machid b'Sofim Yihim Sarivim. ויעבדך תשים ממנו לעמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, Adonai echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele Anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו תדפות בין עיניך וכתבתם זאת ביתך והיה אם שמוע תשמעו מצווי אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם מהרה אדוני אלוהיכם. ישמיעו לכם Sefra Nanda Sifuri. May Allah bless. Et mekeng der bamshik v'tefan. Kisham tzafech v'shor mani v'tefan. Akhrina shod v'tefan. Akhrina shod v'tefan. Iman tziste rurusin. Andiana rafan. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Verse 32. Heavenly Father, Lana Mitzvah. I say the Lord answer. Hasan of Shin B'chaim. I'll say Lana Mitzvah. Your faithful shall be so covered. Since they have it. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה בני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם ירדאי דאי 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 ירדאי ירדאי דאי 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 ירדאי דאי דאי ירדאי דאי 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 ירדאי איי דאי 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 מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורדי אלוהים. עושה פלא, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקם לפני משה, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקם לפני משה. ירדאי דאי 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 ירדאי Yadadai dai 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 yadadai dai dai yadadai dai 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 yadadai hai dai 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 Zezeli anu veyameru Adonai imloch leolam ba'ed yadadai dai 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 yadadai yadadai dai 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 yadadai dai dai Adonai dai 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 yadadai Hai dai dai ונאמר כי פדרת את יעקב גדול ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל Remove the evil forces that surround us, Adonai. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, O God, who watches over and delivers us. Protect us from the delta variant, from all of those things that can hurt us and harm us. Be a Yikat Shalom, a shelter of peace, and grant us life and peace. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום יתה ביד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו בכל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. Page 34 we rise. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת מתעולם ושמרו השבת, לעשות את השבת. בן עיר ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל שבת, לעשות. יתקדל ויתקדש מרבה, ויעלמה דברה כדמך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון. בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ימרו, יהי שמי רבה מברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמד קודשם, ולכולי יעלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתם במהירות.
Sound coming down, page 35. Continue on page 47 with the name Shabbat.
ויחולו השמיים והארץ וחוץ ועם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כי יבוש מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדוני Eloi levoteinu, Eloi Avraham, Eloi Yitzhak, Eloi Yaakov, Eloi Sarah, Eloi Kol Echer, Eloi Leah. האל הגדול, היו ונורא, אל עליון, ולשמיים וארץ, מגן אבות בדברו. במאמרו, האל הקדוש, המניח לימו, יום שבת קודשו, יבם רצה להניח להם, יבם רצה להניח להם, פניו נעבוד, לשמו בכל יום תמיד, ויון הברכות, אל ההודעות, דון השלום, דיש השבת, ברק שביעי, בקדושה, עמדו שני עונג, זכר למעשה. אלוהינו ולא אבותינו, רצי ומנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך, סבינו מטובך, ושמחנו בישועתך, ותאר ליבנו לעבדך באמת, ותאר ליבנו לעבדך באמת, וינחילנו אדוני אלוהינו, ויאהב רצון שבת קודשך, וינוחו בה ישראל, וקדשי שמך, לי 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 ברוך אתה אדוני וקדש השבת יתקרא ויקדש שמי רבם ויעמד וימליך מלכותי בחייך ישראל בהגלה בזמן קרבים מרום יהי שמי רבם מברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרום ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל בשם קודשם ויכול לעילה ויכול לשינתה ושכתה ונחמתה דם מרום במרום תתקבל סמכותך ישראל קודם און בשמי במרום יהי שרבים שמיה וחיים סביב מרום עושי שם בירומה ויעשי שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרום ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו מצוותיו ורצבנו בשבת קודשו באהבה ורצון חילנו זיכרון למעשה וראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כיוונו מכל העמים ושבת ברוך אתה אדוני
מקדש השבת.
So maybe you can get some rosé. Next week, all right?
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית. עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. אנחנו קוראים
Shirte Shmai I'll get a cover.
הגדו בתורתך נעים לא חרם ועד, ונאמר היה אדוני
Kadisha Monistado. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shmei Rabba, Yivach, Yitei, Yismach, Yitei, Yomechon, Yichaye, the Beit Israel. Maya. Yiparach, Yismabach, Yipa'ar, Yismaman, Yismoseh. Todar, V'Yitalev, V'Yitalal, Shemei, V'Yitza. V'Yamar, V'Yimur, Amen. V'Yamar, Amen, Shemaya. Hayim, Aleinu, V'Alkol, Yisrael, V'Yimur, Amen. Aleinu, V'Alkol, Yisrael, V'Yimur, Amen.
President, go on.
Good Shabbos, everybody. Services tomorrow morning, actually Drosh at 9 o'clock. Services 9:45. Remember our morning minions this week, Sunday at 9 a.m., Monday and Thursday morning at 8 a.m., all on Zoom. Choir practice on Tuesday night and Thursday night. Meditation on Wednesday morning via Zoom at 10 a.m. and there will be an executive board meeting Thursday night. You should have received your information about the high holidays via email. If not, you should be getting a hard copy probably on Monday. Either way, please respond to it because we really need to know, to the best of your ability. We understand things are changing, but to the best of your ability, where you'll be davening. There are different protocols in both places, so please read it. If you have any questions, call the office or call me, and we'll be happy to discuss it with you. But please respond so we can set up for the high holidays. We're about a month away. 5 weeks. It's getting close. It's Labor Day. The night of Labor Day is the first night of Rosh Hashanah. So, we always say, is it early or is it late? Well, it's really early this year. So please respond. Once again, good Shabbos, and we conclude with Yigdal.
On August 28th, we have a program in the evening. Return to page 53 for Yigdal.
יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא וייני תל מציאותו, אחד בין יחיד כייחודו, לעם וגם אין סוף ליחדותו, אין בו למוצא גוף. ערוך אליו קדושתו, כמו לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לריש. הינו אדון עולם, כונו צר יורה גדולתו, מלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתנו, שסגולתו ותפארת, לא קם בישראל. נביא ומביט את אמונתו, תורת מנתן. היה נביאו נאמן בית, לא יכל יפעל, ולא ימיר דתו לעולמים זולתו. צופה ויודע סתרנו. כומר לאיש חסר כמפעלו, כרישתו לאישה כקץ ימין, לכתוב מחי כקץ ישועתו. אם יחייל ברוב כסתו, ליד שם תהילתו. אם יחייל ברוב כסתו, שם תהילתו.
We, at this time, want to bless our children near and far. So we say for our daughters, so the daughters on the bias,
ישימך אלוהים כשרה רבקה, רחל ולאה.
we say for our sons,
ישימך אלוהים כאפרים וכמנשה.
and for all of our children.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך. יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונקה. יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום.
ברוך אתה אדוני מלך המלכים שלנו עם כולם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המוציא לחם מן הארץ. שבת שלום, שבת שלום, שבת 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 שלום, שבת שלום, שבת שלום, שבת 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 שלום, שבת 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 שלום, שבת 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 שלום, שבת שלום, שבת שלום, שבת 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 שלום, שבת שלום, שבת שלום, שבת 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 שלום. קבץ